Hello everybody, welcome back for another training video for our environmental data mapper. My name is Rex Robichaux. I'm the GIS administrator here at Virginia DEQ, and thanks for joining today. And I hope that this video, as our other ones, are helpful for you as you kind of become familiarized with our new web mapping utility. So with that said, the swipe tool, as we're calling it, it can be found up here in the upper right. And as you'll see from the tooltip, it's one of the few layers that really requires you to have a particular set of our layers turned on in order to use properly. I mean, you can open it without those layers, but you're not going to get very far. You won't see a lot of usefulness from it. I can actually demonstrate that now. You'll see all you're really doing is swiping everything off from the base map. So let me go ahead and hide that, and we'll turn on the layers. So it's really a two-step process. Step one is turn on the correct layers that you want to swipe, and then the step two is zoom into an area of interest and start using the swipe tool. So to turn on the correct layers, you'll want to expand the external data layers group that's down here at the bottom. By default, it's stocked at the bottom. You can click it to expand. If you want even more real estate, you can then minimize the DEQ data layers, and then you get full view of this. If you don't want to do that, you can always just scroll down. The layers that you're going to be most interested in for swipe are our most recent imagery layer here. Turn that on. Our historic imagery, possibly NAPE imagery as well, and in some cases maybe even land cover. So we're going to take a look at all of these. So I'm going to turn all four of these on at first. And now that I've got all of these layers on, we can start to kind of look at the swipe functionality. One thing worth noting is this is the most recent imagery. You can pretty clearly here see the states broken out into thirds, with the western one third being the newest. That's going to be like 2019 data. The middle swath of the state here is going to be from 2018. And lastly, the eastern portion of the state here is going to be 2017 data. You can kind of see those breaks in the county lines where those were broken up. So it's one thing to keep in mind when you're looking at the most recent imagery is it's always going to be a recent window, normally going back about 3 years. So let's zoom into an area where we know that there's been a lot of land use, land cover change over the course of the last 15, 20 years or so. So I'm going to zoom in up here to like the short pump area, kind of northwest Richmond area that we know has a lot of like commercial and residential development. It's undergone a lot of change, over the last like 15 years. And now that we're in this area, that you would want to look for some of these visual changes in time, knowing that our historic imagery is from 2002, our most recent is from 2017 to 2019. I can now open up the swipe tool, and you'll see here that it gives you an option, and it's a swipe layer, and it gives me a choice of those four layers that are, I just turned on in the layer list. What the swipe layer is referring to is what layer do you want to swipe off. So it's basically saying like, what do you want to reveal what's underneath or compare to something underneath it. So this really, again, comes down to playing with the layer list to where you always want to turn on the two layers that you want to compare, with one of those layers being on top. That's going to be your swipe layer. The layer that needs to be on underneath it is going to be what's revealed under the swipe. So I'm actually going to leave this at most recent imagery. We know that's the top layer. So when we swipe it off, we should see what's below it, which is that historic imagery from 2002. So that's the default. I'm going to leave that as is for now. And now I'm going to start to swipe. And immediately all that change becomes really evident. We see all the short pump shopping, a lot of residential neighborhoods, entire new commercial districts popping up, an entire freeway interchange up here in the upper left becomes pretty immediately visible. We see townhouses going in, some deforested areas, some areas being converted into cropland. Just a whole host of change that might be of interest, depending upon a particular area that we're interested in. Take this in a slightly different direction. This is a lot of human-based change detection. Let's go back to our layer list now, and let's actually turn off. We'll turn off the 2002 stuff, and we will leave on the NAPE imagery. So now when I swipe, if I still have my most recent imagery selected, I should be swiping between the most recent imagery and the NAPE imagery. And why that could be interesting is that our most recent imagery from VGen is typically taken in the spring or wintertime when vegetation is mostly leaf off in Virginia, whereas the NAPE imagery coming from USDA is typically going to be summertime, like leaf time on or growing season. So we can compare vegetation changes over the course of a year to reveal some interesting vegetation variability. So jumping out here immediately are things like evergreen versus deciduous vegetation. We can see the evergreen stands much better compared to just during the nape times. But the nape imagery also reveals a lot of good information or shows where, vegetation may not look very dense, but in fact is, and, is just appearing that way because of the growing season and things like that. So again, another great way to very quickly and easily look for some changes. You might even pick up some other types of land use change, using this type of comparison. But again, just something worth being aware of that, and highlight that you can actually set any combination of these layers to swipe between as you want. So with that said, the last layer that we'll probably may have some interest in looking at, and I'll turn off the most recent now, and I'll just leave on NAPE and the Virginia land cover, which is our kind of a cache service showing classified land cover chain or land cover classifications. So I'm going to go back here. I'm actually going to set it to NAPE imagery. So now NAPE imagery, as you just saw, is actually the top in the layer list hierarchy of the two. So I'm going to set it to that because that's what I want to swipe off, because I want to reveal that land cover data set that's underneath it. So that's exactly what we're doing here. And actually, this is pretty interesting because we're picking up, we can see here that the land cover data set is now getting a little bit aged. I don't remember the exact year off the top of my head, but I believe it's at least 5, 6, 7 years old now. And we're kind of seeing that impact because here's an entire development that is not picked up on the, is not picked up on the land cover data set, but it is picked up on that NAPE. And it looks like construction is just really getting underway. So very interesting, but we can also see that for the most part, the land cover data set does a pretty good job of classifying, impervious surface, dense forested, areas and things like that. And here's yet another, it looks like subdivision going in that did not exist at the time that the statewide land cover data set was created. So again, great way to determine, something dense forested, agricultural, water, is it turf grass, impervious surface, things like that, is to swipe it between these two. So that's really the extent of the swipe tool at this current time. But again, a great, powerful tool for looking at maybe current versus historical aerial imagery to pick up, valuable land cover changes, things like that. Just make sure the only catch here is just ensure that you're turning on the right layers in the right order, and that when you set the swipe layer, you're setting it to whatever that top layer is, so you can reveal what's beneath it when you swipe. Doing so, you shouldn't have any problems using this tool, and again, it's great for picking up these visual changes, over time that might warrant further investigation or might be of interest. So with that said, that's the swipe tool. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video and hope to see you back for more videos soon. Thanks.